is this? Today was a nice weather. I came from Portugal this weekend, and from 35 degrees, and here is quite warm. I was surprised.
Yeah, it's been good the last week.
Yep. But it seems like everyone is dying in Portugal, and it's a good weather, like 20 something degrees. It's not so bad. Feels a bit like a tropical country sometimes. Today was around lunchtime, and I was sweating inside my house. Like so hot it was.
British homes are not built for heat.
No, they're not.
And my flat is amazing for winter because it's a new build. So in winter, it's always 20 degrees. I never need to put my heating on, so it's awesome. But of course, in summer, yeah, it just keeps the entire heat inside.
Yeah.
It just gets warm and warm, and no. Yeah, it's like when I moved here, a year later than Vitor. There's something like in London, everyone jokes about, oh, there's no sun in London. It's always cloud and stuff like that. Yeah, I had to buy those special films for the windows to block the sun out. It's kind of like.
Oh yeah, me too. I have those. Otherwise, I can survive in here. I have that on front of my window. But the most interesting thing is, I was expected to. Well, I am doing the quarantine. If someone from the government is listening to this, I'm doing the quarantine, official quarantine, because Portugal. If you come from Portugal, you need to do the quarantine. But no checks on the airport, nothing, literally nothing, no temperature. I just had to fill the form to get in the country, and nothing. I was in the same queue as everyone else. No social distance on the airport, on the border control. Nothing. I was surprised by the whole thing, but oh well, it happens. It's not that bad.
We'll see. I think it's a calm right now because it's summer in Europe, so things have calmed down significantly and managed to get on top of the spread across Europe. I think as it gets colder again, we'll see if this works.
Are you wearing a mask outside when you go to shopping, or?
If I go into shops, I wear a mask. If I'm in a park, I don't worry. If I'm not near people, it's not. But yeah, if I'm in shops so I've been on public transport once since lockdown. So yeah, I wore a mask then. That's about it.
Did you already bought some masks for?
I always have one in my pocket.
Did you already bought some masks for your dogs, just in case?
No, they're too mental. They never sit still unless they're sleeping. My dog's very binary. Either they're going crazy or they're sleeping. Right now they're sleeping. So.
But they're quite good. Sometimes you put some interesting photos of them, which is I find it quite interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they're crazy. Absolutely mental.
Right. Let's go live then. I'm just gonna turn this. There you go. So, we're live. Hi everyone. Welcome to Tech Talks London, episode number 51. We just stopped our season because this is supposedly to be the season 4. So we're doing this for the past 4 years. But right now, because of the whole pandemic and whatnot, we decided to drop the season. So we're just episode 51, which is easier to remember. Today we have Ant Stanley with us. And maybe you can introduce yourself to our audience, just for them to know who you are.
Yeah, hi. Yeah. I run the Serverless user group in London. I'm one of the co-founders of Serverless Days globally. It started with a conference called JeffConf in London in 2017. And then it morphed into Serverless Days as it took off around the world. So I'm one of the guys who started that. Also, like I mentioned, running the Serverless user group in London. I was a co-founder of a business called A Cloud Guru in 2015. Myself and Ryan and Sam Kronenberg co-founded that business together. As part of that business, I started Serverless Conf. So I started two Serverless conference series. I left that business 2016. Been consulting the last few years. This year, started a new business. So the new business was going to be classroom-based training. We ran our first class in March, and then lockdown happened, and that business is on us, shall we say. And we just started a small online training business called Homeschool. We've got 2 courses live now, which is a workshop style. instructor-led training business, and that's going nicely, but it's still small and growing, and it wasn't what we planned to do 6 months ago.
And the last business that you just created, homeschool, you said, right?
Yeah.
Is that
homeschool.dev.
Is that for what? For kids or for people in IT or for just a specific thing?
For tech professionals. So our first few courses, the course we've got live now is Jan Shrey, the Burning Monk on Twitter. If you're in the service community, you'll know who he is. He's doing his production ready service course with us over 4 weeks, and we've just announced an advanced React course for the front-end developers. So we're trying to target that modern developer audience, essentially.
And for people that because usually our audience goes from tech enthusiasts to really hardcore people, some of them might not know what serverless is. We know that cloud is running stuff in someone else's computer. Serverless is what exactly?
Well, in reference to cloud serverless, a lot of people call it cloud 2.0. You're still running stuff in someone else's computer. There's still a server there, but now you don't have to worry about it. It's all about running your business logic without having to worry about managing your servers, managing operating systems, and all of that operational burden goes away. And it's all event driven. So you basically have business logic that responds to events like a purchase on an e-commerce site or a sign up to a mailing list. Is that the kind of thing? It's a way of building event driven applications in the cloud.
How is that compared to the kind of low-code platform? Because serverless is not low-code. You need to put a lot of effort into that, right?
Yeah. Serverless it's kind of this halfway house between the two. The low-code platforms have actually existed for years. You think something like Microsoft Access, for example. And the latest generation of low-code platforms, like Power Apps from Microsoft or Honeycode from AWS, which was just announced. Those are really aimed at business users. Serverless is still aimed at your developers. But all it really is about taking the operational burden and letting developers only focus on the stuff that makes a difference to your business. So it's only your business differentiating features. So companies who run service platforms, their whole message is, don't worry about the non-differentiating things. Like, patching your operating system isn't necessarily going to, improve sales in your business or add a new business process. If you don't do it, it's going to cost you money. But, so take all that non-differentiating stuff out of the way and you just focus on the differentiating code. So it's still aimed at a technical audience, where low-code platforms are really aimed at business audiences. They counted who runs their own, writes their own little app to do something, or, a business unit specific stuff.
Yeah. When we talk about kind of cloud computing, the first kind of selling point was it's going to be cheaper. Because it's not going to be owned by you, it's going to be run and maintained by someone else, so it's going to be cheaper. But then we decided to actually go and decouple everything. I put serverless in kind of the decouple everything. Is it still it still cheaper to do serverless rather than cloud computing, or not at all?
I'd say yes. It is cheaper in most instances. Main reason the reason it's cheap on serverless is because you only pay for what you use. That's one of the key aspects about serverless. Whereas cloud computing, it was more pay per use in on-premise. On-premise, if you have a data center, you sign up for 3-year contracts, with the provider. You buy infrastructure and amortize it over 3 or 5 years, whatever it was. And you had a set cost of that. Cloud computing, you committed to infrastructure on a per hour basis, but sometimes you have to leave that infrastructure up even when you're not using it, traditional cloud computing. So you'd have your virtual machines there ready to take web traffic, even if there was no traffic, they had to sit there. Whereas with serverless, it's true pay per use. You get charged per 100 milliseconds that your code runs. And because of that, you get significant efficiency. You don't pay for idle, and it drops costs significantly. Where it gets expensive is at the very, very, very high volumes, very large businesses. I think the threshold I've seen very few businesses I've seen go to serverless and go away. One I can think of that has done that, they were doing 50 million events per day, which is huge. So, and that's well out of the scope of 98% of businesses. So that it's something that will meet overwhelming majority of businesses' needs and make it cheaper for them as well, which is why I'm a big fan.
Yeah, that's kind of like one of the thresholds that I've seen, like using serverless. I'm using that, for example, on AWS with SageMaker, stuff like that. They have a lot of tools that it's this as a service. Run the code with Lambda API gateway. Like all of those tools are really awesome to just deploy things, and it makes it easy. Like you don't have to worry about the entire cycle of the coding and coding an API and all of that. It's just like the tools are there. You set them up once, and of course, you still need some configuration, and you need to know about AWS and the workflows and the best practices, and make sure that you put the right variables in the right places. But most of it you don't have to maintain it after it's done. But like you mentioned, it comes as a matter of volume. Like I know, like 3 or 4 startups that are running on serverless, and they basically run for free on AWS because their threshold is below like the 1 million requests per month. Because they're still in the beginning and things like that, so it's free for that. But for example, in my case, where I'm dealing with hundreds of millions of events per day, that cost is already like out of the park for us. So of course we have to invest in a different set of tools, like using the EC2s, Spot instances, ECS, things like that, because it's already a different set of capabilities that it gives us. But of course, like you mentioned, like there are pros and cons in each side. And for me, like we use ECS and all of that stuff, but we also use the serverless because it's the best solution for the specific problem. So, like anything, like people need to know if it meets their needs. And I think like nowadays, with a lot of the frameworks out there for serverless, for example, I think it's Python Zappa. I keep mixing up the name.
Zappa's pretty good for Python.
Yeah, exactly. You can run your entire Django API on serverless. So you can build you can code your entire Django API, so with all the routes and database access, all of that stuff that you know, and just put it on a Lambda. There you go. No servers to manage, no nothing, but it's still your full-fledged Django monster API. So it is. There are some creative solutions out there.
There's very creative solutions. There's a big debate on serverless where people say you need to go microservices by default if you've got a Lambda or any of the other functions platforms. And I'm not actually a huge fan of that, because it's a lot of like small applications that, if it fits inside a Lambda function, you don't need to necessarily decompose it. If it can fit inside your Lambda function, run it in a Lambda function. One of the most popular patterns is the serverless express pattern, where you take your Node.js express server and just whack it into a Lambda function. And people say, oh, that's an anti-pattern. The best practice is you take each route and you make it a Lambda function, you break it out. So going like, well, you add complexity by doing that. If you don't need to, don't do it.
Good.
So, we could talk for hours about this.
I know. Maybe we should do just one about Lambda functions and serverless. So that could be interesting. But
well, it's more about the next generation of cloud.
Exactly.
Not just Lambda.
But maybe and because Marco was talking about billions, maybe it's good for us. It's a good hook to go into the first topic, which is an article from from Wall Street Journal that says that Goldman Sachs is advising SoftBank to either sell or do a public offering, initiate a public offering of its chip designer ARM Holdings. This comes after the whole situation where Apple decided to go with ARM as their main CPU for the laptops and probably an iMacs and the other devices. It comes also where Intel is on. Everyone is looking at Intel to see how they're going to cope with this. Windows even has some devices. Microsoft has some devices that they're preparing to run on ARM. Do you think that that this is a good time for SoftBank to actually sell this? Maybe, I don't know, balance the huge hold that they have from WeWork, because of the co-working space, or is just an opportunity here to make some cash out of it? What do you think?
Yeah, I think I think that's more about WeWork than ARM. I think it's a matter of, as I said, WeWork have put a massive hole into SoftBank and a few other startups as well, that they've invested in that have folded or haven't given the return expected. And ARM is the golden jewel in their crown, so it's probably the easiest way for them to get money in to kind of patch the holes, so to speak. I personally, if they can hang on to ARM, they should, because I think it's got a long way to go. I think the story with ARM is only beginning.
You think that's going to be the future for CPUs for everyone else, for everyone, not just Apple and Microsoft and Dell? Do you think that they're going to shift to just purely ARM?
No, I don't think so. ARM is I think it might already be the biggest personal computing CPU anyway. If you count all the tablets and phones out there. But the other bit, if it takes over the laptop market, or at least starts to take a dent in the laptop market, it starts to push Intel out of personal computing. And then the other side is what's happening in cloud as well, with AWS with their Gravitron 2 processors, which are providing a better price performance than Intel-based CPUs. So, I think the ARM story, moving out of mobile into what was x86 space is only just beginning. So I think, but because there's such positive news about it right now, obviously SoftBank will get good money if they list ARM or they sell ARM or sell bits of it off, which can plug the holes. It's the easiest way to plug the holes that they've got, I don't know what SoftBank were doing with their Vision Fund.
Yeah, that's a massive hole there. $17 billion loss over the previous fiscal year on the Vision Fund, which is massive.
Yeah.
Either way, when it comes to ARM, and because Apple did this kind of fuss about, well, all the applications are going to run on ARM, and the developers can transition from x86 to ARM easily. Do you think that this is good for developers? I know that as a serverless person, what matters is just code on someone else's computer. But as a user of a development environment on your laptop, do you think that's going to be an issue for developers, or do you think they're gonna see, I need to go to Windows to have another Intel CPU, or I don't care, I just want some CPU that can give me enough power and a lot of battery for me to use on the laptop?
So I think for a developer perspective, I think short term there will be challenges because while most tools will run on, you have to essentially recompile whatever your tool is to run on ARM. You can't just take your development environment or your build tools, whatever, and pick them up and move them from a Linux or Windows environment to ARM. They need to have ARM supported versions. And as something like Visual Studio Code, I see people have got it running on ARM already, and I think it does run on the Surface Go's, which run on ARM. And there's a lot more. So I think it's more a question, and it's just there might be short-term pain from a tooling perspective. And also depends what you're building. Like if you're a game dev, ARM's going to be useless to you. You're going to need that power. If you're doing machine learning, ARM's probably also going to be pretty useless to you as well. If you're building websites, probably not going to be a major issue. As long as the tooling can move over, and you can get enough memory in the thing, which you can. So I think there'll be some short-term pain. Long-term, I don't think all those challenges will be addressed. But there will still be developers who are not going to move, like the machine learning types, the machine learning and game devs, and people doing kind of the data scientists out there. I don't think they'll move anytime soon.
Yeah, I think that sound like there's going to be some transition phase because of libraries that depend on the x86 architecture. So it's going to take some time to convert all of the libraries and tools that we can use in ARM. A lot of it's already taking place, mostly because of projects like Raspberry Pi, because they have a huge community and people want to run everything on Raspberry Pi for whatever reason it is. So you even have TensorFlow for the Raspberry Pi because well, why not? So I think a lot of the projects have been already getting ready for that, especially in Python and Ruby. I think Java also. So like there's already a lot of work done, but there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. For example, Docker. So running your ARM container, running your containers on Docker in ARM will be a bit painful, considering that you're going to be developing and building containers on ARM that might then be deployed in x86 architectures. Yeah, it's going to be a bit tricky fiddling between all of those environments. But like I said, it's going to be a transition phase. I think people are, like we've been through this 15 years ago was when Apple did the other move.
Yeah.
Apple now has a better understanding how things work, especially, and they showed the translator between ARM and x86, the Rosetta tool or whatever that is, that emulates, and like the performance that some people have been reporting has been like pretty good. So in those two perspectives, like for the developers, there will be some pain for this transition period. For users, maybe it's going to be a smooth transition. Like if you're talking about websites and things like that, like the user doesn't care if the website is running on ARM or whatever it is, but on their local environment. So if they go for Mac with ARM, they'll know that there's going to be some pain in the issue. There's going to be some pain for some time, but I think it's going to be like 1 year, 2 years. Hopefully a smooth transition.
Well,
but let's see.
I still require my laptop to have a proper GPU, and one of the things I just noticed is
it's
that
going to be
one of the things I just noticed is that I'm doing this live stream on my workstation. I built my own computer because I needed to run some Oculus, test some Oculus games, Oculus Rift,
Yes.
and that was a pain to get the right
a test,
USB.
of course.
No, Oculus was just the remember that sticker that people were using on laptops and funny stuff that says it works on my machine. If you have a Oculus Rift rig, it's pretty much that. It works on that machine. It doesn't work for everyone. The expansion USB cards, it's hard to find. They just work with one brand or just one Chinese brand. You need to have a specific graphics card to run the whole thing, a bunch of cables. So I got all of that set up on my workstation. And because I'm using a webcam from Logitech, so it's a virtual cam and stuff like that, the CPU here, just to give you a quick view, I'm getting, 27% of my CPU and 60 on my GPU. On my laptop, I was hitting 100%. Just to do the same thing, and I was lagging. So my laptop, which was kind of 2 years old, Dell 16 gig Intel i7, was just catching behind all of this stuff that I was doing on the live stream, which is really amazing. So if I'm gonna have an ARM, not just one ARM, I have two, but if I have an ARM CPU on my laptop, that's gonna be really tough to do a live stream. To be honest, I think it's just. Having a laptop with ARM CPU, at least for now, is just going to be for some specific use cases, like web developers or just people that don't use a lot of CPU or GPU. I still need some extra power. Because talking about extra power, one of the next topics that we're going to discuss is something that appeared on the magazine Spectrum from IEEE, which is the body that regulates communications and stuff like that in the United States. And it says that researchers from Intel, funny enough, and the University of Southern California were able to kind of stream down all the AI systems that they had into a high-end computer workstation. And when I saw this, I thought, oh, cool. So instead of running stuff on the cloud, I can actually do some modeling, some testing with AI on my laptop. Let me see how powerful do I need a kind of workstation. And it's a 36 core. So this is a massive, still is a massive machine, still is expensive to run. This reminds me of the days that people were doing AutoCAD. I was one of them a few years ago, that you needed specific CPUs to run AutoCAD. Otherwise, you couldn't do anything else because it was 3D, and you had 3D Max and Blender back then. So it was really pain. And do you think that that we're gonna still, in the kind of couple of years time, we're gonna do AI whatever on our, well, this was in our session, but probably on our own laptop? Can do some Mali, can do some testing with that, or you think that this is just going to go for the high performance computing that we have on the cloud?
I think for the next 5 years it'll probably still be cloud based, but as GPUs get more efficient and more powerful and smaller and use less power,
and ARM
we can
based,
see more and more. Yeah, ARM based. I think what we're going to see is more specialized CPUs. If you remember going way back in the day, I remember, I think it was the second computer we had as a family, like when I was a teenager, and had a math code processor, so a separate little processor on your board that did all the math. On top of we had a VGA graphics card at the time. It was the second. The first one had a Hercules graphics card.
That was a 386, right? An Intel. That had the coprocessor.
So my first computer was an XT, and then for years we didn't upgrade, and then we eventually got a 486. It was like going into a different era, going into the future. But those 286s, 386s, 486s, all that is math coprocessors and that. It was. But I think we're going to get into an era where like modern machines might have multiple specialist processors. So like you've already seen them in your high-end Apple and Samsung and Google phones, they've got AI CPUs in them, which are used more for inference than for training models. And I think in the short term, what you'll see is you might see a laptop with an inference CPU on it, on top of a GPU, and all these, you get more specialized chips. You might even see, things like all your network IO and all of that being pushed into chips. So in the end, what your CPU might be doing on a laptop or a desktop in 4 or 5 years' time would be very different to what a CPU does now, because I think a lot of that might get pushed to specialist chips. And if we get to that point, maybe we can start to see more and more learning happening on a machine, because there'll be a specialist CPU or a specialist type of GPU even to do that. But in the short term, I don't think we're there. But people like Intel have to start planning that stuff now, because it takes them years to design these things, fabricate, test, and all of that, and get them out. It's like a 3 to 5 year cycle. So
I'm still mad with Intel and the bug that they found a few years ago. Remember the bug on the CPUs that turned the CPUs 20% slower than it was before. That was a pain to manage the whole thing. It was 10 years of CPUs that got this bug, and it just got a mess all around. It was really complicated. I don't, to be honest, having a laptop or a workstation that can do this, I get as a researcher, it could be good because I can do my work there instead of using the cloud. But I think that's why the cloud was invented for this, for us to use all of these resources on demand at scale rather than just use our own laptops. And I think that we need to move to there fast. One of the things I keep complaining, I do some stuff with Adobe Premiere, and before that I was doing some stuff with Sony Vegas, so for video editing. Sony Vegas a few years ago already had a network rendering capability. So if you had 3-10 workstations on the same network, you can distribute the load of the rendering of your movie through those computers. That was nice to have. Fast forward 10 years or 15 years, Premiere doesn't have that, neither uses any capability of the cloud, which just amazes me. How far behind we are of using the cloud capability for other stuff rather than just, computing power and stuff there. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I think what computing looks like in the next couple of years is going to change a lot. Like if you think about in data centers, the speed of networks in data centers now is faster than the speed of disk. A few years ago, 10, 12 years ago, I used to look after Dell. I was a SQL DBA for a few years, and a bunch of servers had all connected to Dell EMC DX4. Anyway, but basically I knew that like the most bandwidth I could get through to any of my servers was about 3-4 gigabits per second on disk IO. And now you're getting network cards in your servers at 25, 40 gigs, even 100 gigs is coming now. And I think the fact that you're now getting higher bandwidth to remote resources is going to enable you pushing things out. Obviously, the last mile, if you're doing stuff from home or from an office, you don't have those speeds. But, you could, in 3, 4, 5 years' time, you're going to get desktops that could potentially have 40 gig cards in them. And then, to connect to a remote GPU is probably going to be more an issue of latency rather than bandwidth. So, yeah, maybe that's what actually happens is, you have these remote GPUs and you're doing all the work there.
I would literally buy that immediately. The problem is the network, right? So we're still going to need a high bandwidth. And in London, oh my God, it's so hard to have a good bandwidth. I'm one of the lucky ones. We have someone that posted a comment on here about this kind of topic. So it's from Pedro Umbolino. I'm probably just going to say this in Portuguese because I'm not going to translate this into English. But he asked obviously in English. But he says, the Intel Nero compute sticks built in on board. I never heard about this. Do you heard about the Nero compute? I didn't hear about this.
No, I haven't.
Okay. I haven't.
That's also,
I need to check this.
Yeah, we know about the stuff that, like you mentioned, like Google and Apple are using, but I don't know, Intel also had one.
Okay. Well, he says that it could be nice.
Behind.
Yes, Pedro, if you're listening to us, just put some more details. Maybe we can get back to you. I never heard about this, but maybe I should check it out. Either way, moving forward, and because the next topic is kind of interesting for me at least, because one of my kids, she likes a lot Minecraft. She's kind of a big fan of Minecraft, which is really amazing because I thought that that kids right now nowadays kind of were playing more computing and GPU intensive kind of games. She doesn't like Fortnite. She likes Minecraft, the Roblox as well. It's also a game from that is and another one called Undertale, which is just an 8-bit game. I was really surprised because how the hell kids are enjoying 8-bit and Square games and stuff like that is just amazing. Either way, but the news is that Microsoft was running, well, not Microsoft, Mojang, the company owned by Microsoft that builds Minecraft, was using Amazon Web Services cloud for their own infrastructure, and obviously Microsoft decided, well, we're gonna shift this for our own cloud, and we'll stop using Amazon. And do you think this is a good strategy? Well, for me, it makes sense. They're gonna pay less if they're gonna move from AWS to Microsoft.
Yeah.
Makes completely sense. But do you think that this is gonna impact any stuff that that Microsoft might have with Amazon? Because I know that there's some stuff that they have there. Obviously, they want to push their own cloud, the Azure, the services.
Yeah.
Actually, yesterday it was the Inspire session. Yesterday or today? Today, I think it was the Inspire session for partners at Microsoft. Do you think this is a good strategy for them to move everything for their own cloud, or they should use the best cloud for this kind of stuff?
I think it's a good strategy for them to move to their own cloud, but not necessarily because it's the best cloud. I think because one of the problems Microsoft has had with its cloud is that they never really used it initially. Office 365, if I remember correctly, had its own infrastructure, and they spun up Azure separate to it. And Amazon's big advantage it's had over its competitors from day one is that they always brought the knowledge that they had from running this massive retail giant into running a cloud provider. They've got these builders libraries which talk about stuff they've done with Amazon, the retail business. You see Werner and Vogels get up on stage and talk about how Amazon moved off Oracle into Redshift and Aurora and all the Amazon proprietary databases. Amazon's leveraged its experience of running massive systems and it's leveraged that experience and knowledge in building AWS, which Microsoft has never run, up until 2007, 2008, when they started with their own online exchange. They've never really ran any massive platforms, nothing on the scale of Amazon.com retail. And I think the more online platforms Microsoft runs on Azure, the better Azure is going to get. I think they'll make more mistakes, but they'll learn. It'll be a better user experience, and I think there's a very big difference when an internal business unit that makes a lot of money in Microsoft goes down, because they can shout a lot harder and a lot louder sometimes than an external customer, particularly if that business unit is very big. So I think for Microsoft it's a good thing. Obviously there's the direct, they'll save money, but it'll also accelerate the maturity of the cloud. You can see Minecraft going, well, if we're going to move to Azure, it needs to do this, this, and this, which it doesn't do today, but we get them in Amazon, and Microsoft will go and build those features down, or help evolve those features. So I think it's a good thing for Microsoft, and ultimately it'll be a good thing for Microsoft customers, because it'll bring more maturity to the platform.
And like that's one of the things. Yeah. Like I've used Amazon, Azure, Google, and all of them have their own perks and like pros and cons and things like that. But what I think, like you said, like one of the big advantages for Amazon was Amazon Web Services was it does need to support Amazon.com. And supporting Amazon.com is a beast on its own. So if they can support Amazon.com, it's kind of like they can support anything else on the world. And I think, and that was things that we saw. But the other cloud providers took some time to adopt that idea. On Google, we saw once they started to have those contracts with companies like Spotify, they had massive improvements when they got Spotify. Like I remember the documentation the year before was literally crap, and a year after Spotify came on board, their documentation became a part. Like, what was one of the best documentations that I've seen in a lot of these services. So you did see like there was pressure by a big organization to improve Google. On Azure, their cloud, I hate using it because their web portal is slow as crazy. Like, okay, Amazon is complex. We accept that, but it's fast. Azure, it's a kind of simple interface compared to Amazon, but it's so slow to do anything. It's painful. I just feel like I'll give up. Let me go back to Amazon or Google and figure out how to do it there, because it's just like, for example, 2 weeks ago, I had to deal with a payment issue on Azure. I paid, but it took like 15 minutes to an hour. I can't remember, it wasn't like a massive amount of time for the payment to be reflected on the portal. Like, the services were already available, but the portal was telling me, oh no, you haven't paid, so you can't do anything on the portal until you pay again. But I'm using the service already, but I can't use the portal because the portal tells me I haven't paid. It's like, what the hell is going on here? Like, there's a lot of, you see, there are a lot of issues with your portal side, and unless you use stuff like Terraform and stuff like that, they really need to change that. Yeah. But of course, for them, the focus is really on the enterprise side, and they sell you Azure, like on-premise and all that stuff. But it does look like they are missing a big internal customer to drive that quality up.
Well, let's hope that this Minecraft Realms can do that. I think that for Microsoft, they're looking quite closely at Microsoft Teams because it's getting a lot of attention right now. And we were just talking
like today.
Yeah, we were just talking with you, Ant, before this, because you said that Slack is kind of counting on the help of the EU to go with the antitrust case for Microsoft because of the whole situation. Microsoft is apparently bundling Team with 365, which is kind of fun. Interesting. A few years ago, I'm certain that you were also one of those kind of people that look at Internet Explorer and say, well, listen, I want to install Firefox probably, so Microsoft needs to unbundle the Internet Explorer with the operating system. Does that matter right now with Teams and 365 for them to include products there?
Yeah, it's the new Microsoft with the same old tricks. Because that's, there was, I think, with Teams essentially, they're essentially just bundling. They're trying to get market share away from Slack. So what they tried to do with Skype, and Slack basically stole their thunder and Google's thunder by just producing a product that people wanted. That was just more user intuitive and better, basically. And Teams essentially is a Slack clone, Slack/Zoom clone, because now they're adding Zoom features to it. And they just basically, package it up and they offer it to their customers as default. And then I think there is an upgrade path as well for additional features, like if you want to have more people and or anything. But the basic is bundled in, which the basic is what you pay for, equivalent to the same as a Slack license. So, if you're paying for Office 365, why would you use Slack unless you're already using it?
Isn't that the same with Google?
And that's definitely
right.
Yeah, well, Google's now doing that with Meet as well, because was Hangouts and now Meet. They've done some massive improvements to it. If you're using Google, I think that the big difference is Google doesn't have a foothold in enterprises. Google's pretty much everywhere. It's big in schools, it's big in startups, but it's very, very small in enterprises. So I think that's why, and that's what Slack's going after, and that's Slack's market. Obviously, startups do use Slack, but it's the enterprises, obviously the bigger market. So, and Slack's not going after schools and universities, which Google's very big in. So I think it's as much because as Microsoft's using their dominance in enterprise to seed this new product. And, we have seen where Microsoft have done that, and they've leveraged that monopoly dominance in an area to create a new product, and then later down the line create new revenue streams, because Microsoft is a very kind of long-term looking business. You can definitely see Microsoft going, okay, we want to dominate this, kill Slack off, and then maybe 3-4 years time add fees, or start to slowly take away some of the features from the free version, things like that, which is something they did with Office 97 a long time ago.
I think that everyone right now is trying to catch up with Zoom, to be honest, when it comes to video capabilities.
Yeah.
Microsoft lost the ground there. They've been building Skype for years. Well, we're using Skype for one reason, because I can use this on OBS. None of the other platforms give me that capability. But Microsoft is building Skype for years. None of the features. We just have now the blur background on Skype, something that Zoom was using for donkey's years and stuff like that. So I think everyone is trying to catch up and try to kill Zoom. I bet that Microsoft is going to do a huge push, as you said, for the enterprise, because they see this as a large market, and if they can give the same capabilities as Slack and as Zoom, people just that's okay, it's already there, I'm already paying for that, and that's not going to be an issue. Either way, I think, as you said, it's a new Microsoft with old tricks.
Yeah, but what is interesting about the. But what is interesting is, like, when Microsoft released Teams 1 year ago, everyone kind of joked about it. Like, what is Microsoft going to do? Like, why is Microsoft releasing Teams? Like, Slack is already the big player. HipChat that existed by Atlassian kind of lost that war. And now we're seeing Slack doing a lawsuit against Microsoft Teams. It's kind of like, so it wasn't a joke. It's like they're really making a dent in the market to the point that Slack wants to sue them. So you are playing against Microsoft. And like you mentioned, like, they have been doing this for a lot of time. They know all the tricks in the book. So I'm intrigued to see how this one plays out.
Good.
I think also with coronavirus has probably accelerated this whole debate as well, with the push to remote.
It is.
Yeah. And it's like, I feel like if companies already have Microsoft products, why choose something else? And instead of, just use Teams that's integrated. There you go.
Exactly. And we're gonna get to that remote working. But before that, we got more feedback about the Intel Nero Compute, which apparently it's a USB stick with a VPU. And it's a deep learning accelerator. Pedro is telling that you can, for example, connect it to a Raspberry Pi and run TensorFlow. Sounds interesting. I never heard of this, so I'm going to check out this later. Moving to the next.
Sounds like something that needs a lot of bandwidth.
Exactly. So on the next topic, it's an article I shared with you about from Harvard Business Review, from someone that considers who is he? is this I think it's is it what a she? I don't know. That tells that this person considers himself or herself a knowledge worker, and she's doing an experiment that probably knowledge workers don't really need to go to the office. It's just kind of comparing what it is working from home or working remotely, and then working from an office. And working, what means working from home means in terms of for the future. Will this stay? We know that Twitter allow people to work from home up until the end of this year, I believe. Facebook as well. Google, I don't think they have any kind of plans. I think it was it Slack? I don't know. It was something of that company that says, well, we're going to go fully remote forever. People can work from whatever they want. And because you do conferences, and you just said you start a new business to do
classroom-based
exactly
training, or online training. Yeah,
exactly, training. Do you think that working from home still has? First of all, is it better to work from home? Just give me kind of your view and input on that. Is it good for working from home or working from an office? And as running a business, do you think that working from home will impact some way the way that we live in the near future? Because we're not going to the office at all because of this pandemic. It's not going to stop now, and it's going to take some years for us to overcome. Or do you think that in a couple of months' time, everyone is already going to forget this and we're going to go back to the office? What do you think?
I think it's a hard one because, the easy thing is this is going to change everything, and we're never going to go back to working in offices. I don't think that's true. I think we will go back to working in offices, but I don't think at the level we do. So I think it's going to be a lot more like you go in once a week or 2 days a week. A lot more flexible working, I think, will be the future. I think a couple of reasons I don't think it'll be fully remote is I think our entire society, our cities, are all built around leaving your home to go work. So our houses aren't really built for working from. In London, the cost of a spare room to have as an office is incredibly high. If you're renting or buying a place, doesn't matter what it is. That additional cost to have a room to work from is huge. A lot of us have places that aren't suitable, to really work from for an extended. You can do a day or two, but they aren't really suitable to work from for an extended period of time. So personally, 2 weeks into the lockdown here in London, my wife turned to me and said, "We need to move. We need a bigger house." So we're actually currently looking for somewhere else to live. We're looking at selling our place and then moving, and probably move another 20 minutes further out and get something with an extra room or two. Which wasn't something we planned before the lockdown. So I think that's one of the big things is, our entire cities, our cultures are not built on, it's not just, it's a cultural thing, but also the physical geography thing. We're not built the city's not built for you to work from home. So that's going to be a change. I think but I think this could be, that kind of tipping point that changes a lot of that. So you could see people moving further out. You could see, like I said, that 30, 40 minute, out of London on a train, which used to be really cheap, might become more expensive as there's greater demand for people who want that extra room to have an office. You might actually end up seeing some places in central London, for example, getting cheaper because people don't necessarily want to live because they're not going in 5 days a week. So I do think it's going to be a lot more flexible. I do think I do think some businesses will go fully remote. I think that fully remote does offer challenges. If you've got tight deadlines and you're working as a team, having that fast feedback loop of being physically in a room with someone is incredible. Where you can ask a question, get an answer right now. Like one of our original ideas in starting a business around classroom-based training is we thought the feedback loop is significantly better than online training. If you're doing a self-study course, you watch it all in your own time on videos. If you have any questions, you go into a forum and you ask a question and someone might respond to you, most likely not the lecturer, probably another student or something like that. And you don't really have that feedback loop. So people get stuck in these courses. They're stuck in a classroom. You have a question, you ask it there, you get an answer then. And so that's one example how being in physical proximity to someone is really useful. But the downside is everyone being in a room together means commute, means living close to each other. So I don't know what that balance is going to be, but I think people will go back to offices, just not at the same scale. Maybe everyone ends up hot desking, I'm thinking, 7-8 years ago, I worked for Level 3 Communications in London, and the team I was in, that greater team, was 70 people. But in our London office, we only had desks for 10 of us. Because the expectation is you're only in 1 or 2 days a week, and most of the time we're a customer-facing team, so I always said be in front of a customer. And London office space is expensive, so they didn't want to pay for a bunch of desks that should be empty. So I think you might see more of that, where a team can't actually physically or won't all have desks in an office anymore. If you want to do a team offsite or a team meeting, you have to go and hire a conference venue or something like that. You could see that kind of thing more and more. It's going to be interesting.
When I was working at CSC, our office before they merged with HP, right now they're called DXC, and our office was in King's Cross, which was a nice place. Very expensive to have a meal or something, because I'm Portuguese. I like to have my meal, not grabbing a sandwich and this kind of stuff. So it was very, very expensive to go there. Funny enough, we were in the same building that I think it was Louis Vuitton or something like that. So it was nice, kind of views around and everything. Then they moved to Cannon Street, and between the move, what happened was you started to have to book a table to work. So you have to have an online system within the company that you had to book a table, and that table was just available. That desk was just available for 3 days at maximum. Then you couldn't rebook the same table for the next 3 days. You needed to give 1 or 2 weeks apart for you to book it again, so that people don't get familiar with their own space. I think that because of this pandemic, first of all, as you said, probably they're gonna just kind of half of the office is gonna work on specific days, the other half is gonna work on the other days. If you want to go to work, maybe you need to use an application or something to tell your manager or to tell your employee that you wanted to go to work today, or going to go to work, for them to have some kind of control over that, and also over the desks. One of the thing I noticed, because I usually try to follow the Portuguese news as well, and the Portuguese government, just as a side note, decided to put some regulations when it comes to schools after September, so that kids can return to school safely. And they have three or four different terms there. The first one is if the class is small enough to accommodate all the students there, and let's assume no one is sick, then you can go to school. If you have a bigger class and not enough space, and you can just go to a bigger room and stuff like that, because it's schools and they can't be built bigger. And right now that you have to use the current space. If you don't have enough space for those students, you're gonna get students, let's say on Monday and Tuesday, then half of the other students go Wednesday or Thursday, and that kind of stuff. So they rotate, or this week is going to be for 15 students, and the next week is going to be for the other 15 students. So they have this kind of term. And the last one is kind of if everyone is sick, then you're going to use some kind of asynchronous education, which means that the teacher is going to send you something you're going to do on your own terms and time, then you're going to return to the teacher. So everything is kind of planned and laid out so that you can use any kind of the models. For me, in terms of London, I'm looking at Canary Wharf to see how those offices are going to be used. It's going to be a fun experiment to see, right?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I worked in Canary Wharf for my first 2 years in London, so I've been here 11 years now. And a lot of the banks is very much a culture of being seen. Everyone has to be in the office, and the banks are very security conscious, and you have to be there. And it's going to challenge their culture, dramatically.
It is.
I
think this is first of all an opportunity, because let's take WeWork. WeWork was building massive office spaces in London, but they weren't they were doing small office spaces, like in locations outside London. I think that if they move from those big office spaces in London and go to smaller ones, maybe these kind of companies might have a chance in the near future to survive. Otherwise, why the hell should I go, I don't know, 20 minutes to London to an office space that no one is there because everyone is working from home, or there's some kind of outbreak of the COVID there and they need to shut the whole thing down, and there's a problem. I think people start to look at this in a different way. At least that's my take on.
Yeah, I'm seeing a few more of those small co-working spaces pop out around central London. So in zone 2, 3, 4, I can see some of those starting to appear. So we're talking about co-working spaces that are just one floor, or like there used to be a shop there and now it's a co-working space with maybe like 10 desks. So like those small ones are starting to appear. But I think the big thing comparing those to the likes of WeWork, well, WeWork went for the full VC San unicorn kind of vision, because you can see like what's the name of the company that has been doing this for years before WeWork?
Regis.
Regis. Yeah. Okay, they're not glamorous. They don't have that fancy design. It's more like, you want a desk? We have a desk. That's it. Yeah. And they've been doing that for 10 years or 15 years. And they have like the double of the locations of WeWork and almost half of the staff. And it works. Look at that. They're making money out of it. But of course, they're not following that VC and look at us all glamorous and lifestyle. It's like, hey, you want a place to work? That's what we give you. And I think, like WeWork failed in a lot of senses, but I think it's a business model that can work. And we're seeing like very small businesses doing that business that business model work. It's just like being real about what the business model is. You don't need a school. You don't need apartments. You don't.
Free beer.
You don't need it. It's nice, but you don't need it.
Free beer, free coffee.
Well, coffee. Come on, like everyone needs coffee.
I think it's going to be interesting to see what WeWork looks like in 2-3 years' time, because I think a lot of those perks are all going to go. The offices will go. They'll still be fancy, but I think they'll probably be a lot more downplayed. And I think there'll be a fair amount. I think there'll be a lot less big offices. I think there'll be these smaller regional ones all over the place. I still think WeWork will be around.
Do you think that we're going to go full cubicle? Remember that good old days of the 80s and the 90s that you had your own kind of 4 walls and doors and stuff like that? Then we went crazy with the open space, and right now it's not open space, it's something even more.
I don't know. I think cubicles might have a comeback, but I think some companies are building them up because of coronavirus, so you can isolate yourself. But I think after the pandemic, that might change. I don't know, actually. It's a bit of a strange. I don't see cubicles as they used to be coming back completely, but I do think, the days of the big open plan are going to be dead. Like there's so much research and so much evidence out there saying it's not conducive to a good working environment because you're far too easily distracted.
True, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, that's why the noise cancelling companies with the headphones they're doing a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
I'm still waiting for Sony to release their new headphones, Sony is kind of like, we're gonna delay this until somewhere.
You don't need more headphones. You already had a bunch of them. It's just like me, right?
Well, look, I have 2 headphones.
Sure.
I lost track of them by now.
Yeah, I know. Either way, talking about losing track. The next topic is about IBM Cloud, and this is kind of fun, because this is an article, just a bit of statistics about IBM Cloud that went from 2012 from 107 billion in revenue. So that was in 2012, 107 billion dollars in revenue to 2019, 77 billion dollars in revenue. So it's been decreasing their revenue year after year. And when you look at the cloud market, we see Amazon taking a share of roughly 33%. I think it's a bit more, but either way. This is the stats from, where is it? From Statista. And they have 33% of Amazon, 18 from Microsoft Azure, 8% for Google Cloud, then 6% from IBM Cloud. The question is, do you see IBM doing anything interesting in the cloud nowadays that keeps people, this is really cool to do?
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange one. I think the Red Hat acquisition has been good and bad for them, because I think Red Hat acquisition basically paused a lot of their strategic initiatives. I think it basically, anything interesting they were doing kind of went on hold while they try to integrate these companies, and they move people around, and like, you know, IBM have their own serverless platform, you know, look at that, and that, which is open sourced, it's called OpenWhisk, and IBM Cloud Functions, and I'd look at the development of that, it's just frozen since Red Hat acquisition. I think that's happened across the board with everything. On the flip side of that, you're seeing a lot of investment into Red Hat, you know, so they hired Andrew Clay Schaefer, who was with Pivotal, and then Puppet before that, one of the guys who started the DevOps movement, and he's built a whole kind of DevOps transformation team there, which is doing interesting things, and they seem to be investing a lot into Red Hat's consulting business, which has been growing. So at the expense almost of IBM Cloud. So it's going to be interesting, you know, maybe in 3, 4, 5 years, IBM Cloud as business almost doesn't exist, but they've got a very healthy consulting business, which actually puts them into, you know, then this Accenture they're competing with, and all the big consulting shops, rather than, you know, your cloud providers, which makes them a very different company. But overall, I don't think their strategy is fantastic. You know, I think the Red Hat thing was more, we have to do something, let's buy them. You know, that's the biggest fish they could afford to buy. That could maybe make a difference, but I think there's potentially more of a panic buy rather than a strategic thing going, okay, we want to maybe focus more on services rather than software and hardware and cloud. I don't know. I'm not long on IBM Cloud. I wouldn't be surprised if in 2-3 years' time, IBM Cloud gets shuttered or becomes something else, you know.
Do you think that Alibaba Cloud right now has a market share of 5%, give or take? Do you think that this has enough potential to, I don't know, go up until 10 or 20% like Microsoft Azure?
So Alibaba and Tencent are the really interesting ones. Tencent made an announcement about a month ago saying they're going to invest $70 billion, I think $72 billion over the next 5 years into their cloud platform. So Alibaba's cloud's double the size of Tencent in China. And if those two both have very mature platforms, a lot of them are, you know, be blunt, the AWS clones. You can see a service in AWS and the exact same service as an Alibaba or Tencent. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, a lot of companies, there's big business of being a fast follower. So it comes down to the execution. And I do think one of the challenges Alibaba and Tencent are both going to have is breaking out of China. The problem is the Chinese internal market is so huge, they could just exist within China for the next 5 to 10 years. They've got data centers outside of China, they've got capabilities outside of China, but all the customers using that are Chinese businesses. You know, the same way most of the customers using AWS or Azure in China are American and European businesses. So I think they will get a lot bigger. I think they'll more than double, maybe even triple in size. But I think they're going to hit a ceiling when they try and break out of China. And part of that's going to be cultural. Part of that, you don't know what trade wars might be happening at some point. You know, and yeah, I think the big challenge they're going to have is there's restrictions on American providers operating within China. You know, Azure and AWS have restrictions operating within China. And I think until those restrictions are lifted, I doubt you'll see Alibaba and Tencent getting a free reign in Europe, you know, being able to compete on an even footing in Europe with AWS and Google and Azure, you know, and if they can't do it, because I think that it'll be a political thing more than anything else. I think is going to prevent their growth outside of China.
Yeah,
it'll be
with you. Yeah.
interesting.
It's a tricky one. I've seen well, me and Mark, we were at the Alibaba Cloud event. When was it? 3 years ago in London, something like that. When they launched in London.
Already.
Maybe more than that.
I think that was 2 years ago too.
Was it? I don't know. It's already this year has been like a decade to me. So it was some well, like 2 years, 3 years ago, whatever. In here in London, and the stuff that, first of all, I was really impressed by the services that they were launching, which was exactly as AWS, as you just said, as a clone, which was kind of interesting because. The time that they have to, when Amazon launches something, and the gap that they have, the time that they have to develop the same functionality on their side, it's really impressive, and how fast they do this. So, because I'm assuming that there's no IP that is going to be shared between Amazon and Alibaba Cloud, so they have to look at what Amazon is doing and copy that the best way possible, so that work on their side. Yeah. Which is really amazing how they develop this thing so fast and so accurate when we compare to AWS.
Yeah, I think there's two things with it. One is, some of AWS's service announcements are actually quite obvious. They do a managed Elastic search, like you think, like, why didn't you have that 4 years ago? Yeah. So I think some of that is you can predict what AWS is going to do, and I've actually seen certain like features like Alibaba's cloud functions. They had NFS support before AWS had NFS support for Lambda. That got announced last month before, May, I think. EFS, AWS EFS. So, your network file share for Lambda got announced 2 months ago. Alibaba's had it for about 6 months already. So, it is going to be, yeah, like I think some of the stuff is not so much that they're copying. They're thinking like, okay, well, our customers have the same challenges. Let's build services for that. They'll be halfway down that road anyway, and AWS announced something and say, okay, they've learned. I don't think they're starting from scratch every time, but yeah, I think also throw a lot of resources at it. It's Alibaba's competition is not really AWS, it's Tencent, and Tencent's competition is not AWS, it's Alibaba. Interesting. So on the serverless side, Tencent own WeChat, which is huge in China. It's a chat app which has fully fledged applications in it, payment apps. You can go shopping in WeChat and all of that. You can send money to people, and you have all these mini apps in WeChat. And what Tencent are working with all their WeChat developers and want them to build the applications on Tencent's cloud, and particularly the Tencent serverless platform. And there's half a million WeChat developers in China. So Tencent, for example, if they want to get all these developers using the Tencent cloud, they're not even thinking about AWS. AWS is so far. AWS gives them a good strategy roadmap, and it gives them a good place to say, okay, we're doing the right thing, and it helps feed their thought processes and their design and strategy. But they're not thinking about competing with AWS. They're about developers off Alibaba, and we want to win the local market because that local market is gigantic.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I think that with what was it? Alibaba, they have the kind of the Singles Day, which is kind of which is just for singles people in China, and the revenue that they got from just one day was bigger than Amazon got kind of a couple of months in all of their Amazon stores and stuff like that, and they hit that in just one day, which was really amazing. The whole market in China is completely out of anyone's mind. Good. Going to the last two topics. This one I find it quite curious because it's a camera. It's called Wise, whatever. It's a camera. It's a security camera that uses AI to detect people. They have the AI based person detection, and they changed that feature to pay what the customers want to pay about that. So it reminds me of that software that people use as it's not a freeware, it's a donation, right? So you pay whatever you think you can pay for this, and you start using that. Obviously, this has some implication because I see this as a two-way, right? Because we have a security camera that has an AI feature to detect people, obviously, they want more people to be detected because they want the machine to learn from the whole system, but people want to pay less for it, right? So pay whatever you think. Which brings me to another, this is not here on the news, but brings me to another example, which is the opposite with BMW. So BMW, in the recent news, they decided to go in for you to pay individually for each stuff that you have on your car. So let's say that you have heated seats. So you're going to do a subscription to have heated seats on your car. So you're just going to pay for the months of winter. It's a feature that's already there, but you're going to pay for just the winter months, and it's going to be like that from BMW. So it's kind of the opposite, right? So pay as you go to pay whatever you want, but this is just all behind of us as the product, right? So they want to use us as the product. They want to use us as a feature. Do you think that this kind of model, either with BMW or this with Waze, it's going to be functional for companies to put forward?
I think companies are experimenting with it. I don't like. So Tesla does that as well with their. It's a software upgrade to increase the range in your car, because they fit every Tesla Model S with the same size battery, but you pay whatever, a couple $1,000 less for the shorter range, you know. And it's a feature. It's literally, you can go in and pay at any time, and they just send an update over the air. So where all these features. Yeah, it's a strange one because, I think as someone who owns like a smart camera, I've got a Nest home camera here. I've got Nest everything here, and I do I get slightly annoyed when I have to pay for the subscription for the service, to the cloud service, to store the recordings and to get the face detection. But I kind of understand why you need it. But yeah, if you had to pay once off, and then and then have to upgrade to get features that should be included, I'm super annoyed. I just wouldn't buy that thing. I think it's an attempt to try it out. I think I definitely see Wise adding a subscription at a later date, because I don't think the pay what you like model, pay what you can model, I think it works at comedy clubs. And it works for buskers and city tour guides. I don't think it's going to work for a company, an IoT company with hundreds of thousands of or millions of devices. You know, maybe it is as much about, in the short term, it's at the user as the product. You know, they need to improve their models. They need to improve the accuracy. Like my Nest camera its AR facial detection is not great. It thinks I'm about 4 different people. You put a magazine down on a countertop, and I think that's a person. If it's facing at the TV, it detects each person on the TV as a different person. It can't tell the difference. There's no depth perception, and that's from Google. You know, so I do think, you know, having data to have accurate models is incredibly important for Wise. So hence, it's probably more valuable to them to get those faces than it is to actually get the revenue in the short term.
Good.
So we'll see.
That's exactly what I was about to say. I think it's important for them to have these kind of models and training them. If you're going to pay something, well, it's some cash that they're going to receive. But I think that it's more important for them to have access to this feature. For people, it's kind of it's all in terms of the small print, right? You're going to pay whatever you want, but if you want to use this feature, we're going to use the data of whatever you're going to collect throughout the entire day, and you're going to use to train our models. Which brings me to the last topic, and I thought that you might enjoy this because you have dogs. And I thought that, there's this kind of feature that Alipay is starting to use, which is nose print recognition technology for pets in its insurance application. Do you think that this is actually Do you think...
doesn't want to be on TV. Come on. Come on. Oh, well, hang on. 2 seconds. Come on.
This is the main advantage of doing lives. Oh, there you go.
There we go. Come on.
Just a small companion.
Okay. We've got someone who's ready to answer the question.
Do you think that the noise... it's not going to work.
There you go.
Do you think
Yeah,
that?
it's an the nose recognition.
The nose recognition.
Yeah, I think it'll work. I think it's a great idea. Because yeah, like I said, if I want to, we got pets insurance on our dogs. They both have to be chipped. So if you want to sign up your dog to be for pet insurance, you have to go to a vet, pay for it to be chipped. It's very standard in the UK now, but not in other countries. Like from South Africa, it's not that standard to have your dog chipped. Vet bills are expensive, so it's all about reducing that the user friction to doing it. So you think about how accurate it is, doing it on a phone camera. I don't know how that's accurate that's going to be. Maybe it also helps prevent dogs being stolen, but it's an interesting one.
It is, especially because apparently it's AI that locates biometric markers on the animal nose to identify them. I never knew about this, that apparently nose, it's quite different from... I know that it's different from each dog, but I never paid attention to how much different it is. But if they can figure out through the nose that this is your pet and this is not, and that was stolen, something like that, I think it's a good tool. Especially if you don't need to ship them, you just need to use some kind of application that can do this. It's going to be interesting. One of the statistics that on this news from the chair, which was from South China Morning Post.
Everyone wants to say hi now.
That's nice. Only 25% of the pets in the UK have insurance against the 7% in Japan that actually have it, which is 1% less than in China. There's an application called Finding Rover, which is machine learning to match photos of lost dogs to images on the database. I think that for people that have pets, I think that this might be interesting and probably good to see in the Western kind of civilized world, for people to use applications to either for the pet insurance or for tracking or for something else. I think could be interesting.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think identifying and tracking dogs, pets are really expensive now. I don't know if you know this, but dogs in the UK, the price of puppies have gone up dramatically. When like my wife's on a few Facebook dog groups, and she's saying like the breed we've got, the Hungarian Vizsla, their prices have gone up 3 times over this period, and basically all breeds, the price of dogs have gone up. So you can pay £3,000-4,000 for a dog now, which is crazy. So people it makes them more valuable, more likely to be stolen, and also you don't want to lose your dog, obviously. So anything that improves the ability to track your dog, you can remove a microchip, but you're not going to really change their nose. Not if you're stealing the dog to resell it.
That's why on offline I ask about if your dog uses a mask, because if he uses a mask, you can trace the dog on the application. I think that maybe security cameras will improve and do CCTV of dogs to nose kind of recognition, stuff like that. That could be interesting.
My Google Nest can detect a dog bark. So we got the cameras for the dogs, not for security. And if our dog's at home and they bark, we get an alert, and the alert says dog barking, not like there's a noise or people talking. It already identifies dog barks. So it'll be interesting if actually gets to the point where it can identify a nose, identify the actual dog. That'll be interesting.
That could be interesting. Excellent. And Marco, I know that you have rabbits. Do you need also an application to detect the nose rabbit or whatever? Do you think that's going to be useful?
I'm intrigued to see how that could work on Todas rabbits. Like all pets, they have chips. In the UK, they require that. I don't see people trying to steal a rabbit that often. Dogs, that's a different story. I know friends of mine that had like a boxer or cocker spaniels get their dogs stolen, because those are valuable dogs, being because of the breed, being because of fights, things like that. So I think that I don't have to worry about people stealing my rabbits. I'm thinking like if they would steal my rabbits from my flat, I think I have other things to worry about. Like how the hell did they get in my flat?
Good, excellent.
So I would be intrigued to see an app that detects rabbits. Well, Google is pretty good at that, like separating pets from each other. Grouping pictures of the specific pet into the specific group area, like from cats, dogs, chihuahuas, all of that stuff. I was impressed by that one. So maybe this insurance app is using Google for that. There you go.
Excellent. And that's pretty much it for today. And thank you very much for being with us for the past half an hour. It was just half an hour.
It's fine.
Don't stress. I know that it's quite late and here in the UK because people go to bed early, but because I'm betting that you're working from home, so tomorrow you can have more 5 minutes before you go to work in bed before anything else. Either way, it was a pleasure having you here with us to discuss this kind of news with our audience as well. Thank you very much for being, as I said, for being with us. Maybe we should catch up on the next episodes for a bit more of talk and yeah, that's pretty much it for today's episode.
Let's catch up.
Yes. I'm gonna finish finish the stream. So for people that are watching us on next, we're gonna have a next guest on Friday. So see you then on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you very much, and see you Friday. Bye.